Netanyahu, during similar attacks in Paris, said that during this kosher market attack, Netanyahu was saying that nowhere is safe for the Jews unless, other than Israel. So whether it's a false flag attack or not, we need to look at what is the intention of the Israeli government. The Israeli government is looking to bring the Jews all into Palestine, to colonize our land, and to create this context of holding the highest stage of victimhood in the world.
And to be perfectly blunt about it, I'm surprised it hasn't happened more often. I think it's a testimony to the peaceful orientation of Islam, okay? That despite all the horrors that Israel and the West have inflicted upon Muslims and Arab Christians as well, this hasn't happened with far greater frequency.
And whoa, nothing else happens. The police is not doing anything. The judges are not doing anything. And if they say something, we just overrule them. We destroy the International Criminal Court, the ICJ, etc., etc. So I think our political class is realizing, wait a minute, we have the most unequal, corrupt societies in the world, and we can do whatever the hell we want. And Donald Trump is showing that now, and Netanyahu is showing it, and the rest is following. Like, what the hell are they going to do to us? Nothing.
And this Department of Justice will investigate, identify, and root out any individual or violent extremist group attempting to commit or promote this heinous activity. And that's it. That's, if anything, that sounds to me like an indication that the Trump administration believes it has the right to summarily execute, i.e. murder, any American on American soil who is on this non-public list that it has compiled without any due process at all. We're talking about the worst form of fascism here.
All these science fiction movies and books you've been reading, where eventually you will have these cyber wars, human beings fighting against all these AI robots, and hiding in houses with AI robots searching for us through walls and everything. That stuff is happening, man. We would be considered wackos and crazy for taking that stuff seriously a decade ago. That stuff is coming, man.
Forgive the obscenity, but there's a revolution coming, motherfucker.
All right. Good day, everyone. We are here today with brothers Rami, Yahyah, and Dimitri Lascaris. I've just been on the show with Dimitri. Very interesting talk about Judaism and Zionism. So I can advise people to go there, or actually just wait. I'll put it on this channel as well. Anyway, great to see you guys. I wanted to discuss with you guys today something that's just recently happened, and I wanted to hear your opinion about this, because I realize we're living in a world, man, where news is so fast. Every day, what happened yesterday is old news, and we're really in a crazy period, man, where things keep happening. And now we had the whole Bondi Beach debacle. And I would like to know how you guys see this, because I find it a very, you can almost say it seems to be coming at a very convenient moment for some of the powers, the greater powers in this world, so to speak. And I would love to hear your opinion about what's going on there. Lots of people are saying this is probably a false flag with Israel behind it. We have now been living in the day of, we've been living in the days of the war on terror, where, of course, everything started with 9/11, things that people start to question now as well. I want to start with Rami. What do you think? How would you evaluate what's going on there? Do you also think it's a false flag? What is your opinion? But first, of course, welcome back, brother. How are you?
Doing good, and always a pleasure having our conversations. Well, I think you've mentioned it pretty clearly. It's definitely convenient for the Zionists to keep weaponizing anti-Semitism in ways that benefit their political ambitions. We could talk about this specific case of the Bondi Beach attack, but we could also talk about the bombings that the Mossad organized in Iraq and Egypt to justify mass immigration of Iraqi and Egyptian Jews into 1948 Palestine to the so-called Zionist entity. But also, I think it's also important to notice the coverage and reaction of the Israeli state when it comes to these types of attacks. I mean, Netanyahu, during similar attacks in Paris, said that during this kosher market attack, Netanyahu was saying that nowhere is safe for the Jews unless, other than Israel. So whether it's a false flag attack or not, we need to look at what is the intention of the Israeli government. The Israeli government is looking to bring the Jews all into Palestine, to colonize our land, and to create this context of holding the highest stage of victimhood in the world, so that we stop talking about the Palestinians. They keep bridging gaps between anti-Semitic attacks and Palestinian statehood. I mean, as if they're trying to create a correlation that Australia recognizing Palestine leads to such an attack. But also, it's important to put emphasis on the fact that Ahmed El Ahmed is a hero. Whether it's a false flag or not, this is the courage that Arabs, Muslims, whatever you want to, however he wants to identify as. Clearly, this guy is not a Zionist. Came to the defense and took a heroic stand to put an end to this tragedy. Um, and then there's also these comical images of what is it, Arsen Ostoyevsky, this guy who always happens to be at the wrong place at the right time. Truly stay away from him. It seems like wherever he goes, something bad happened. I mean, someone calculated the odds of him being at the Nova Festival on October 7 and him being at the Bondi Beach in Australia. It's like close to zero. I mean, it's clearly shady, but before even speculating, just analyzing the response of the Israeli government, you get your answer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I also find it very convenient and especially considering, of course, how almost common knowledge it has become that ISIS is working on the side of the Israeli government, not only in Palestine but in the region. Um, I mean, Israel has even admitted treating ISIS fighters, I think who were fighting in Syria, if I'm not mistaken. And a lot of geopolitical analysts are asking the question, for example, why has ISIS never attacked Israel if they are so-called fighting the so-called holy war? And of course, yeah, these extremist groups, whether it's in Ukraine, these neo Nazis, whether it's these right-wing death squads in Latin America, or ISIS types in West Asia and North Africa, it's always the same thing. It seems that all these right-wing radical extremist groups are always on the side of empire, and they are the foot soldiers of empire. So when they are uh, suddenly attacking Jewish people, for example, in the West, it makes no sense. It makes no sense compared to the fact that they don't do it in the region. So the people are asking questions. What's going on here? Your thoughts, Dimitri?
Well, you may be interested to know that although this atrocity happened 4 days ago, this is the first time I've said anything publicly about it. I have not a single comment in any context, and that was a deliberate decision on my part because as soon as it happened, this horrible mass murder, uh, I knew, as I'm sure you did, and probably everybody listening to this conversation, that the Western media were going to provide absolutely unrelenting, nonstop coverage of this atrocity because of the identity of the victims. So I thought, why am I going to chime in and condemn it when I know that there's going to be round the clock, 24/7 condemnation of it. And there should be, of course, unequivocal condemnation of it and accountability. But why should I chime in and offer my 2 cents when they're going to ignore all the other people who are being murdered on a daily basis? For example, Palestinian babies freezing to death um, in the Gaza Strip within the last few days. We know that there are horrific murders of Sudanese happening in Al Fasher in Sudan. There have been reports of mass graves being uncovered. Uh, I would imagine that on December 14th, just based on what we know about what's going on around the world, the number of people who were murdered on that day, who were killed directly or indirectly because of injustice, was probably, and this I think is a very conservative estimate, in the hundreds, and it may have been in the thousands on any given day. In the world in which we live today, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people being killed unjustly because they're exploitable, vulnerable, because of their identity, their religion, and we don't hear about any of them, or the vast majority of them. They get no coverage. So I finally decided to speak up because uh, of the opportunity to talk about this with the two of you, which I thought was, an opportunity I shouldn't pass up. But I just want to say that, I'm sick and tired of the discrimination being shown by the media towards most victims of injustice in this world and the preferential treatment. When it comes to this claim that this guy is ISIS linked, I would point out that not only has ISIS not attacked Israel, which is absolutely remarkable if it is, in fact, what it claims to be, but this character, Abu Shabab, who was just killed in the Gaza Strip, this gang leader, there are credible reports that he was linked to ISIS. So not only was he not attacking the occupier, he was carrying out atrocities against his own people on behalf of the occupier. And it was not the occupier who killed him, it was the Palestinian resistance, apparently. So uh, that raises a whole host of questions. Every time I've traveled to West Asia and spoken to people on the ground, whether it be in Lebanon, Iraq, Jordan, Palestine, over and over again, I heard, ISIS is a creation of the United States. Everybody believes that in the region, and frankly, I think they probably know better than anybody because they have to deal with this monstrosity, ISIS. And This certainly is, from the perspective of Israel's agenda, quite convenient timing. So, was this a false flag? I certainly wouldn't exclude that possibility. Nobody should. But it is entirely possible, too, that this person was genuinely outraged by what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people in the name of Judaism. And Let's just be blunt here. When everybody is telling you, everybody in the corporate media, uh, everybody in the Western political elite, and most members of the Jewish community are telling you that Israel is the Jewish state, and that it acts in the name of and on behalf of the Jewish people globally, and you see what they're doing to Arabs and Muslims, this kind of horrific, murderous behavior is inevitable. And to be perfectly blunt about it, I'm surprised it hasn't happened more often. I think it's a testimony to the peaceful orientation of Islam, okay, that despite all the horrors that Israel and the West have inflicted upon Muslims and Arab Christians as well, uh, that this hasn't happened on a with far greater frequency. So those are kind of my general thoughts. I had to get them off my chest, so I thought this was as good a time as any.
It's very amazing. It really shows that after more than 2 years of genocide, how little um, um, intention there is among the victims to retaliate in that way, at least. Like, they're defending their land within the confines of their land, but besides that, it seems not to happen, at least not much. And you also, I mean, you see the Ben Gavir walking around with guns, and I mean, these people are absolutely nuts, but somehow they're walking around in complete safety and feeling totally relaxed while doing all that stuff. And yet we have to continuously digest the idea that we have to We see Muslims as savages and violent and this and that. I saw a very interesting number a while back when I saw the discussion with I think it was Revolutionary Change with Jen and Peter, and they showed a number that in the United States in a year there had been like 370 or so mass shootings with overwhelmingly white, probably extremist right wing perpetrators. That's more than a terrorist a day on a terrorist attack on a day on average. I don't know which year they were talking about, but like a lot of shootings. And if that would get the same news coverage as one attack where they can point the finger at a Muslim extremist, I mean, the whole world would be scared of Western or European, ethnic European terrorism. You know what I mean? It's purely about the stories that are put in people's head, that they tie certain things to one group and not to the other group. That's why, for example, the victims are often seen as the perpetrator, and the perpetrators are seen as the victims. And the Israelis are still doing it after more than 2 years of genocide. I think this kind of psychological manipulation is so important to understand. And that is why false flags are also so important. Because you're not going to tell me that a society that's committing more than 2 years of genocide on camera, that is using pagers to attack people in other societies, that is bombing literally almost every country in the region, is not able to commit a false flag while their whole history is based on these kind of attacks. I think we have been so conditioned in our societies to feel bad because we may be seen as a conspiracy theorist. That has been one of the most successful psychological operations, by making you feel bad, questioning reality, questioning what's going on here. And I think we should stop seeing it as a bad word or a bad term, conspiracy theory, because history is full of horrible conspiracies. You know what I mean? You wanted to say something, Rami.
Yeah. So right after October 7th, Palestinians were coming up and saying that Israel employed the Hannibal Directive. The Hannibal Directive, which is to basically kill your own people, Israel killed their own people for political gain, because they saw that a captured a Israeli soldier that is a prisoner, has political weight that is counterproductive to the political ambitions of the state of Israel. So any government that puts political ambitions over their own people have demonstrated us that they have the ability to kill their own people to get to bring their goals ahead. And it tells us that why wouldn't they be able to do the same in Australia, in killing Jews at this Hanukkah gathering on Bondi Beach for the same political ambitions that led them to do the Hannibal Directive. So I think that we could tie both events together. And you have to be a sadistic government like the Israelis to truly employ such a strategy.
Can I just add some commentary on the issue of mass shootings? I'm glad you raised that, Karim. Um, Here's the data up until December 15th for the current year. And this is from the Rockefeller Institute of Government. The number of mass shootings that has occurred in the United States up until December 15th is 509. So that's an average of
That's
about
even
one point.
worse.
Yeah, it's what you said something in the range of 300 to 350, I think. So, and that's just up until December 15th. So the number undoubtedly will be higher by the end of the year. And the so 1.5 mass shootings per day on average. And by the way, this is consistent with the prior 3 or 4 years. I've talked about this numerous times. There have been a couple of years in the past 5 years where it was almost two per day. And the number of fatalities from these mass shootings is 1,728. That's the number of people who have been murdered in mass shootings just this year. And the total victims, so casualties and fatalities, is 4,486. and 25. I think it's an entirely fair question. Why isn't that getting much more media coverage than these isolated atrocities that happen, especially, the ones involving favored victims, as is the case, favored by the media? I mean, you know, the questions they should be asking, because look at the death toll, man. I mean, this is way in excess of the number of people who have been killed in anti-Semitic attacks in the Western world, and probably globally. So, some of the questions they should be asking is, who are the victims? Are there some patterns? Are they generally, are they disproportionately black? Are they disproportionately indigenous? Are they disproportionately poor? Who are the killers? Are there certain, tendencies, patterns we can identify there? Uh, what is motivating them? You know, like this question, the U.S. media and politically never want to talk about this. What is motivating all of these people to engage in these murders, these mass murders every day in the United States? All of this gets completely shunted aside, even though the victims are far more numerous, and just in the United States, than the victims of these isolated atrocities. And the significance of the issues are really sort of pressing, especially in a society where you have more guns in circulation than you have people, which is what the United States is. I mean, one could argue that the United States has been for several years now in a low-level civil war, right? Depending on what's
Yeah.
motivating these people, depending upon who's being targeted, you might have a credible argument that there's a civil war unfolding in the United States. No one even raises that possibility, but they go crazy when a favored victim is murdered by some, psychopathic lunatic, like happened in at Bondi Beach.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is such an important conversation. It reminds me of the discussion I had with Ajamu Baraka and Gerald Horn on a recent panel together. Fantastic show. I can advise everyone to look it up. It's in our video list. Together, Ajamu and Gerald, magical team. And it reminds me of this problem that we still have in the West, in the world actually. And it's just white supremacy. I know it's a dirty word, people don't want to hear about it, but it is a genuine problem. And I think with white supremacy comes a kind of narcissism of violence, or you could almost say a violent narcissism. That is, every time there is this sense of encroaching emancipatory influence, emancipatory dynamics of people who are stigmatized as non-white, as falling outside of that hegemonic group, you always have violent figures taking matters into their own hands and start shooting them up. And I think it's a serious, serious problem, because
Mhm.
also in Europe we have a lot of right-wing extremist groups, of course, often funded by the Zionist state, such as Tommy Robinson, but these are often hyper violent and want to engage in a lot of violence. There was recently a racially motivated rape in the UK, okay, where these racists raped a woman of color, and that was purely racially motivated. And that is that kind of really, really imperial violence that we see in the West, that is rooted in colonial white supremacy, and that creates very violent individuals, especially men. Okay, women are less. They are also part of it, but less victimized to that mindset. And I think if we would give that just as much, if not more, attention as, for example, violent extremism in West Asia, or among West Asian groups, then people would be way more scared of this kind of ideological thinking than how we are all made scared of Islamist extremism. And it shows this imbalance of narrative. Really, it's global. It really shows, because you were just saying, Dimitri, that there are more than almost 500 something mass
509.
shootings.
Yeah.
509, okay, 500 mass shootings every year,
No,
which
no,
is just,
the number's higher in
oh,
most of the last 5 years. Right now,
yeah.
up until December 15th, that's the number for this year, but it's actually been significantly higher in some
Wow,
years.
wow, wow, wow. So you have massive, you could say, terrorist attacks multiple on average per day, often white right wing extremist perpetrators. And if we would give that attention, the psychological narrative would completely shift also away, for example, from white supremacy, and it would show it what I am what I'm wrestling in my head with is, for example, what if the global south would pay serious attention to this? You know, that their colonized mindset, it would have such a tremendous effect on their colonized mindset. And it's one of the reasons why Western media keeps focusing on terrorism from, for example, Muslims or people of color, and not from domestic or in group ethnic terrorism such as right-wing extremism. And it also explains why, for example, countries like Korea and Japan have such anti-Muslim sentiments, even though there have both been millions have been killed among them by Western imperialism, and they hardly have any Muslims in their societies. It is that imbalance of narratives that's being shaped by a global media, which is also still being which is also prevalent in the global south, including China, by the way. I'm just baffled that why is the media not paying more attention to this? Why is everybody going along with this imbalance of narrative? Because I can tell you, in Asia or the global south, they're now also focusing lots of attention on Bondi Beach. And
Yeah, true.
everybody is now again being indoctrinated with this idea that you have all these crazy Muslim extremists. Why don't you spend everyday attention to all these mass shootings?
I
You know,
think
yeah, go ahead.
when we're looking at the way Trump is hyping up and building consent for war against Venezuela, it radicalizes people within the United States. I'm currently in Panama right now, where we're commemorating the 36th year anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Panama, where they bombed the basically the capital, raped women, slaughtered civilians. These people end up going back home to the United States as deranged individuals, and that's basically the society that the United States have become. It's a society that is comprised by thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers that committed war crimes around the world, and that they're hyped by the government. I mean, it's basically like a racket, um, and it's naive to believe that this wouldn't have an impact on your everyday American and their ability to commit terrorist attacks back home. So I think if we were to ask ourselves the real questions, we would understand that the U.S. policies are not sustainable to producing a healthy society, and they're responsible for the war crimes they're committing abroad and the terrorist reaction that is happening back home. Are the United States able to be a pacifist country and drop their bloodthirsty ambitions? I don't think so. So we need
Yeah,
to
that is
scapegoat.
again that narcissism of colonial white supremacy, that narcissism of violence. It's where this just you do it abroad. You're abroad abusing and killing people and being killing people based on their ethnicity, and you come home and I wouldn't even say it's all veterans, not at all. It's a kind of ideological idea that's rooted in that kind of racialized system that we have, and it's very comparable to Zionism. It's that that violent narcissism rooted in ethnicity. Let's not act like we don't have that in the West. Zionism is a European ideology that sprang out of European colonialism, which is very similar to white supremacy, and that kind of latent white supremacist thinking. I'm not saying these people are thinking in their head, I am white and I'm better. It's a latent kind of thing that is being conditioned into us since education. We open books, we read books in schools, we only see white teachers, white this, we read about bad stories, we see the bad guys in Hollywood movies. There are so many, the news, there are so many a bombardment in our brain that condition us into this form of thinking, which creates a very kind of violent a culture also at home. And it also explains, for example, I saw a video last time about Vietnam, and it was just so painful to see. And I saw this interview of a Vietnamese guy. I wish I saved the video. There was this Vietnamese guy who went to another Vietnamese guy in Vietnam, and he interviewed people about America and Americans, and they were positive and they would like to go to America. And then he asked questions about Muslims, and he was like, "Oh no, we don't want Muslims here, and this and that." And I'm like, first of all, there are hardly any Muslims there. So where does this internalization of these kind of thoughts come from? And second of all, I almost wanted to say, my dude, you guys, your ancestors, there were millions eradicated by the United States. What are you talking about? Muslims didn't do that to you guys. And that is what I mean with that imbalance of narrative around the world. It's like it's really amazing. We're having I would I dare say they have the most violent, brutal empire in human history that has killed more people around the world ever, and hardly nobody is hating them. But yet, most people around the world are hating their victims. It's amazing, and I think Bondi Beach is the example why that happens. It's that imbalance of narrative, and it also shows why such a false flag, if it were to be the case, would be so popular among those elites to do. Why it would be so important to keep doing these things, because it has such a tremendous psychological effect. Your thoughts, Dimitri?
Oh, in the last few days, on my own X feed, I have been inundated by trolls who are demanding that things like we expel Muslims from Canada. And one post that I put out was um, was prompted by what prompted me to put out this post was a report that um, there are people in Canada's political elite who are um, uh, arguing aggressively that Canada ought to provide a path to permanent residence to the 300,000 Ukrainian refugees who are in the country. Less than 1,000 have been let into Gaza from Gaza. Less than 1,000. We allowed 300,000 in, right? So I just pointed out these numbers without real commentary on X, and I was inundated. This was 2 days ago, by white supremacists who were saying we can't allow those savages into this country. The ones who are here should be expelled. We want nothing to do with Islam. And I've never seen a post of my many posts that have related to the discrepancy and the discriminatory nature of Canada's immigration policies. I've never seen a reaction like that. It's very clear to me that ever since this mass murder in Australia, that there has been a huge escalation in Islamophobia in the public discourse in the West. This is just one little example I've given you, right? You could see it all over the place, including in the so-called mainstream media. So it's and there have been reports going back some months now that Israel had planned to counter its precipitous decline in public opinion by fomenting Islamophobia. That they had that plan before this mass murder in Bondi Beach. And in fact, the New York Times revealed a few months ago that Israel had been involved in a covert social media campaign in the United States and Canada to foment Islamophobia, about which, of course, the US and Canadian governments did nothing. So you see this murder in Bondi Beach, and you see how immediately the propaganda machine springs into action to stoke hatred towards Muslims and Arabs. And it's really hard not to conclude that this is fishy. So, again, I don't know if it was a false flag, but whether it was or it wasn't, they're certainly acting like it was.
And that shows that's why I always say racism is central in my academic work, because it's such a powerful global organizing principle, psychological organizing principle also. That shows the power of racism. I mean, it's so easy to foment Islamophobia after a thing happened like that, while, I mean, let's be honest, I don't see the reverse. After all these imperial attacks around the world, all these mass shootings, I just never see anti-white hatred being exploding anywhere. I just don't see it, because racism always goes into one direction, because racism has been invented during colonialism, and racism always goes from white to the most dark and to the most non-Western. And it
Yeah.
is or at least what is perceived as the most non-Western. All these things are social constructs.
Right.
And it shows again, that's why you had these studies. I saw those news items too, those studies where the Israeli government literally just admitted that, okay, we cannot make people love Israel anymore, but what we can do is make people hate Islam, and that's the most important thing for to get support. They openly admitting it, and and why are they openly admitting it? Because they know it's so bloody easy to manipulate people into racist thinking that they don't even care of admitting it. And why is it so easy? Because even the people who see, even the racists who see that Israel is doing that, they still find it just too enjoyable to hate on Muslims. So they will still do it because it's also a kind of addiction. It's nice. It's it satisfies that need to hate on that Hollywood stereotype, that fantasy of that ridiculous fantasy of the evil Arab that they have in their minds. Because racism is just addictive. It makes people, it makes shitty people feel bad, feel better than other people, even though they are probably in real life much worse. And it's just too easy. And like I said, that's why white supremacy is such a hell of a drug. It's so important as an organizing principle, because you need, I said it before, man. You need one brown patsy doing a bad thing, and a massive amount of ethnic Europeans will walk in lockstep for the flag again. It's too bloody easy. And even we can teach people, guys, come on. Still, so many people just do not feel affinity with brown people. Even if you try to convince them, let's listen, blah blah blah. It's you're being manipulated. Yeah, but it's too much ingrained to still not feel solidarity or affinity with brown victims for many people. So I don't know if you get what I mean here.
I do.
Uh, yeah, Rami.
I mean, it's it's racism has been used to colonize, obviously, and it allows us to basically play into the hands of our colonizers. There's no way for them to keep control of the entire. I mean, look, we look at India, right? How we're a few thousands British be able to colonize India. Well, they leveraged the caste system, leveraged whiteness, and we see this also all over Latin America and the Arab world, where the people closer to the colonial powers end up organizing a society and oppressing the masses. We have an obligation to not play into those games. This is why there are ideologies that look into leveraging class warfare rather than petty nationalistic battles between races. Um, I don't know, but I mean, look, this is the Israelis. They've built their entire system on justifying their need for a home, for a safety for the Jewish people. But why? How does that safety come? By promoting Islamophobia? Truly,
Yeah,
truly. So I think this just shows that this is purely a colonial project of divide and conquer and oppressing the indigenous people of the region, all by playing through this construct of whiteness and racism. Um, but
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I just want to
yeah.
point out, if I
Yeah,
might,
go ahead, Dimitri.
one way in which this, one concrete example in which this atrocity is being instrumentalized by Zionists. The British embassy, I'm sorry, the Israeli embassy in Britain put out a statement in the last day or two welcoming the announcement of the Metropolitan Police uh, in the United Kingdom and the Greater Manchester Police Forces that they will arrest people promoting the phrase globalize the intifada. Arrest people. you know, so uh, they're not simply using this atrocity, exploiting these atrocity, the Zionists, to foment hatred of Muslims is already sky high in the West, but they're also using it to suppress the civil liberties of all of us, not just Muslims and Arabs. So, whether or not this was a false flag, people should be very concerned. And whether or not you are particularly concerned about what's being done to the Palestinian people, all people of conscience should be outraged by that, of course. But let's suppose you only care about conditions in your own country, which sadly is the case for many people living in the West. They seem only to care about conditions in their own country. Well, if you care about your civil liberties, you should be very concerned about how Zionists are using uh, these atrocities and the suffering of others in order to suppress our freedom of speech and association. Very, very
Yeah, and
concerned. I
sorry,
just want to
go
say,
ahead.
a frequent guest on my program, who's from West Asia, has been theorizing for over a year now that it's just a matter of time before they set up internment camps in the West and they start herding up Muslims. When he first said that a year ago, I was like, nah, I can't believe that's going to happen in my lifetime. Now, even before this atrocity in Bondi Beach, I see that as a very realistic possibility.
I mean, they're doing it already. We
I
look at the these prisoners in the UK. I mean, pretty much people that are advocating for Palestine are being heavily criminalized and weaponized. We're seeing the people with signs saying, "I support Palestine action. I oppose genocide." Massively, like being arrested in masses. And we published a report not too long ago, Dimitri and I, related to the cybersecurity and defense tools that Israel have been exporting to the rest of the world at this Milipol conference in Paris. The tools of mass surveillance that are basically tested on Palestinians and then used back home against people of conscience, truly, right? So, um, I mean, we were able to uncover these facial recognition tools that are being used at borders. And what's insane is that the more countries use this Israeli software that are meant to basically police and recognize faces and basically population control, the more people adopt these tools, the more it reinforces the data that the Israeli government has and being able to better police and better, um, I mean, population control the world. So there's pretty much nothing good that comes out of this, and this is why I think we should really stay up to date with these Israeli exports of weapons, but also of cybersecurity and surveillance tools.
absolutely, absolutely, and you make a couple of very good points there. First of all, you talked about how also Latin America you see that kind of racism and everything. Yeah, I was just thinking about it today. I saw this political discussion um, about Latin America between Fiorella Isabel and Vanessa Beeley, two friends of the show, and they were, and I was suddenly it dawned on me, how many times do we discuss the indigenous people in these Latin American countries when we talk about political issues? We talk about Scheinbaum, Miss Scheinbaum of Mexico. We're talking about Venezuela. We're talking about that Venezuela is more anti-imperialist, which is of course good. We're talking about Argentina with that crazy Millet, etc. But how many times do we actually talk about the majority of these countries, the indigenous people, the real Latin Americans? We're always talking about these political elites, which are 90%, at least those in power, even more, white Europeans. Why do they all look like Europeans, all these leaders? Because they are white colonizers originally. Why do we never talk about this stuff? That is number one.
So,
Number
so
two, I
I'm
also think keep that keep that thought, Rami. I'll give it to you in a minute. Also, there's another thing. I think what we see right now with that expansion of power, that wars, potential false flags, crazy uh, overreach of power of capital, such as Peter Thiel and all these corporations, etc. I think that what they discovered in the West. I think most of our political leaders discovered that there are no checks and balances in our so-called democracies to keep power in check and to keep them to how do you say that
Restrain them.
to restrain them and to oh man, I had that word in my mind, but at least indeed Yeah, maybe another word, Dimitri. I see it on.
Deter?
Yeah, to
Deter?
deter, to constrain their behavior. They realize that in our Western democracies we have absolute impunity. There's literally nothing that can happen to us, and it started with 9/11. They can do war after war after war, destroy people, support genocides. Wait a minute, we just have a few stupid protesters that we throw in jail. And okay, you have a flotilla going to Israel. They just torture them, and whoa, nothing else happens. The police is not doing anything. The judges are not doing anything. And if they say something, we just overrule them. We destroy the International Criminal Court, ICJ, etc., etc. So I think our political class is realizing, wait a minute, we have the most unequal, corrupt societies in the world, and we can do whatever the hell we want. And Donald Trump is showing that now, and Netanyahu is showing it, and the rest is following. Like, what the hell are they going to do to us? Nothing. And about that, the eradication of liberty, what you said, like I think it was Rami who said that, and also you, Dimitri. I also remember that a couple year ago, or maybe even longer, when Maruf said that the internment camps are coming, and I wrote an article about that. I said that I started to believe his prediction, and even though it looked really extreme in those days,
Mhm.
and that brings me back to that racism thing again. Eh? You say like, oh, what they're doing to the Palestinians is eventually coming home. People should wake up. People should wake up, guys. Written in many of my articles as a psychologist. Somehow, racism always overrules liberty and your own benefit. People will vote for politicians that are destroying their lives as long as that politician is saying hateful words about brown people or Muslims. It's unbelievable the power of racism. People are destroying their own liberty just because they just keep believing in that simplistic way of seeing the world. And final point I want to make, and then give it to you, Rami, is what you were saying about that you were at that military conference where they had all these new technology and stuff, which is very scary. And we now have that so-called protests in the UK against the digital passport. You will always see that you have some protests, and then we already know it's going to happen. I can already tell you it's going to happen. Our Western so called democracies will do whatever the hell they want. These digital passports are going to come. They will say maybe they will delay it or whatever. There will be nothing that can stop all the stuff that's happening to us besides a revolution. I'm not going to kidding. Why would they not do that when they can literally support a genocide and nobody can stop them? Why would they not do whatever the hell they want? And that digital passport is just a little thing that is just that we see in public. It's just a distraction from all the stuff they're implementing in the background, all these smart cameras and that are with facial recognition, and that immediately download all your behavior online into a package. And then it's really scary stuff. Or AIs that are following you personally all over the internet. I mean, oh man, I can keep going. Sorry, Rami, go ahead.
I mean, you mentioned Peter Thiel, Palantir, and all of these Israeli cybersecurity companies and surveillance companies. Well, I think there's a deep need for them. The inequality is getting to a level that is uncontrollable, and now the wealthiest people in the West no longer have anyone they could trust. So they need the strongest weapons used by as little people because they cannot bank on an army of thousands of people to protect them. Because at some point, the people will betray them. The people will overrule, will revolt. And this is why you're seeing these tools of mass surveillance, where just like a team of 20 developers can develop code, use camera tracking systems, block your passport using this digital ID that you were mentioning. So it's about how to rule as many people with as little amount of humans involved, all while protecting massive amounts of capital. And this is the trajectory we're going towards, and we need to. I mean, I wouldn't call myself necessarily a skeptic of these like these Tony Blair Foundation types of plans, but I truly didn't see how quickly it would happen. How would they be weaponized against the masses? I was always a bit suspicious, but truly going to these conferences, the people selling these tools are basically telling you straight up to your face that uh, I mean there was a big I mean there, the cybersecurity events are always about two themes combined into one. It's cybersecurity surveillance mixed with smart cities. And as soon as you see if your product it could be both used for cybersecurity surveillance and smart cities, maybe these are not two separate industries. Maybe it's just one single one. It's just seeing it from two different point of views. Efficiency for you as a customer, as an end user, efficiency in God knows what, but still they'll try to sell you that pill. And then cybersecurity surveillance, which is we can limit or restrict your freedoms at the through some algorithm, through some if else conditions. If you hang around with the wrong people, we will block your bank accounts. And this is something that we've experienced in Canada. Truck drivers who didn't want to get vaxxed so that they could cross the border and do their job, the proletariats, had their bank accounts frozen. So this is truly alarming. There were other things I wanted to talk about related to like racism in Latin America. I just discovered today there's a word called criollos, criollos, which are basically this is a term for white Spaniards that have never intermixed over the last 300-400 years in Latin America, that own the plantations, own the factories, and are in some way in control of the state. And this is huge in Panama. And these people do not intermix in society. I do not see them in Panama, but I was told by these comrades that I've met that they're somewhere, they're everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just want to. Can I add some thoughts on this very important point about no constraints, no checks and balances? Uh, just for people understand how alarming the situation has become. The Intercept published an article a few days ago, and the article is titled "White House Refuses to Rule Out Summary Executions of People on Its Secret Domestic Terrorist List." Okay, so what the Trump administration has done, I didn't even know that it had a secret list. I thought its domestic terrorist organizations designations were public, but they have a list that's secret, and that list the Trump administration is using to decide whom it can kill extrajudicially in its so-called drug war. Okay, so the Intercept about a month ago um, sends starts sending requests to the Trump administration to clarify whether the administration thinks that it has the power to kill people on American soil that are on this secret list. And the administration has refused to say no, it doesn't have the power to do that. And there's a quote in here which, to my mind, sounds quite ominous. The Justice Department responded to one of the articles of the Intercept on this matter with this statement: "Political violence has no place in this country, and this Department of Justice will investigate, identify, and root out any individual or violent extremist group attempting to commit or promote this heinous activity." And that's it. That's, if anything, that sounds to me like an indication that the Trump administration believes it has the right to summarily execute, i.e., murder, any American on American soil who is on this non-public list that it has compiled without any due process at all. We're talking about the worst form of fascism here. You know, when the government uh, the government assumes the power to murder, to kill without due process any citizen based on no evidence whatsoever. Uh, we're basically into the worst form of tyranny.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it just made me think about something just now, and that is we often read in like in books and science fiction and everything about the total depravity of the rich. Like very very scary things like rituals, child rape, and sacrifice rituals, and all these sort of secret societies and total domination and control. And in Game of Thrones you saw these types, like a crazy king, sexually depraved and everything. We got to be honest, man. It becomes clearer and clearer. It's the truth. And I remember years ago, I saw people like Whitney Webb and uh, Ryan Christian of the Last American Vagabond, and I saw these people, and I always thought they were a bit kooky. They went very deep into these like the secret societies and the ultra rich sexually abusing kids and all that, all these technological to control us. And I have to apologize to them, just even though I've never said it, but I just feel that I was wrong. They were just ahead of time, people like Whitney Webb and others. Because we're really dealing with absolute sick fucking
Fucks.
psychos. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. I would say, and I was like, oh, it's my own show. Yeah, fucking
Sorry,
psychos.
but I had to say it, man. These people are monsters. We are ruled by monsters. That's the bottom line. We need to get that into our heads and do something about it right quick.
Exactly, and don't forget, we are talking about the Epstein class. You have no idea what these people are doing in the background, man. I mean, what do you think all these they're working with Zionists. They are working with ISIS. What do you think all these sick CIA bosses in black blinded cars are doing when they are visiting their ISIS slaves in Syria, and are visiting at night some of these ISIS prisons, women's prisons? What do you think these sick fucks are doing? And in the old days, we didn't want to think about it, but we have to start thinking about these things on a micro level. They're doing extremely sick stuff. And, like, it reminds me of a discussion I recently saw about these smart cities. We have no idea, but I think Whitney Webb discusses these things as well. They are buying up land in Latin America, such as I think also in Venezuela and or Honduras, where the billionaire class is buying up land, and they are building free zones, tech cities, and that where they are independent of the law of the nation state. They have their own law, where they have freedom cities, where they can have focus on tech and this and that. And in other words, we're just literally going back to middle age fiefdoms. And Trump is a supporter of this stuff. He's deeply intertwined with this stuff. So that's slowly eradication of the nation state, because you have laws and you have things you have to abide by, and going back to fiefdoms being run by billionaires, where everybody works in tech cities and so-called freedom cities. Now we already know what's going to happen there. Like all these Epstein classes are doing, it's going to be one depraved pedophile empire. I mean, I I'm not feeling
Indeed.
bad about saying this stuff anymore. It's these people are really really sick, and ultimate wealth makes people really really sick. These are very dangerous, scary, sick people.
Well,
And
sorry, what's interesting is what's the chicken and what's the egg here, because I think in order to acquire billions of dollars, you have to be sick. For you to think that, let's say, $100 million of wealth isn't enough, that $1 billion isn't enough, and then you have these complete whack jobs like Elon Musk and Larry Ellison, who now have over 100 billion, $150 billion of wealth, and they're still accumulating wealth. For you to feel it appropriate for you to possess that kind of money, especially when there are people all around the world who are starving, homeless, living in abject poverty, they have no future, you have to be a psychopath from the get-go. I think pretty much every billionaire on this planet is a psychopath.
that's why
Uh,
you need to read my Substack regularly, my brother, because I actually recently published an article, and it's called we embraced psychopathy as culture and we call it capitalism. And it's indeed, and it's indeed
You nailed it.
psychopaths.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and psychopaths are already pre-equipped to elevate themselves to positions of power in our societies, our capitalist societies. And once in power, they are also very well equipped to expand their power. You know what I mean? And that's the chicken and egg
Yeah.
problem. Indeed, what came first? Historically. But I
Mhm.
do agree that there is a we are absolutely run by psychopaths, and you see that these people are attracted to political positions of power because of the amount of people we see now in our political scenes all over the world supporting what's happening in Palestine. So it shows that there is a very very I'd say, disproportionate amount of psychopaths in the political classes. Otherwise, they would not support what's going on there. You know what I mean? You want to
And
say
Yes.
something, Rami?
I just wanted to say that as much as these smart cities would be scary for us who would be most likely to live in one of them here in the West, but what does that mean also for the people in the global South? How much worse could these types of surveillance happen? Again, I'm currently in Panama, where this country actually is demilitarized. There's no police. Sorry, there's no military, but the military is actually border police, and border police is really like the definition of surveillance, right? So they're militarized with guns. Their goal is to just protect the border, protect the canal, and make sure that no migrants get up to reach the United States. So in some way, these smart cities that we're going to be living in here in the West are going to be the rest of the world is basically a buffer subservient to the West and ensuring that the rest of the world is basically a prison, keeping them into hard labor to make goods for us here in the West. So my biggest concern here is at what point do we cross the point of no return, and how can we resist these types of this ugly trend that is leading us towards like total dictatorship. Um,
Total enslavement,
yeah,
like really science fiction level stuff we're in, man. Imagine now with AI already what they're able to do, and you have AI machine guns shooting Palestinians in Palestine. Man, it's a matter of a few years, and we already have them, but a matter of few years, and we have advanced robots with AI walking around. I kid you not. And they are
Yeah.
being fed Western racism because they're all trained on Western internet. Sorry, on Western internet data that is predominantly racist and very biased against certain groups and cultures. Yeah, good luck with all these AI robots walking around, and it's classist and it's sexist. And every bias that we have in the West culturally is being ingrained in these machines. And these,
well,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Jeff Bezos, right, massively invested in Boston Dynamics, and especially in these dog-shaped robots that are able to carry guns. So at this point, billionaires don't necessarily need anymore to convince people to fight and die for them. There's a price tag they can buy for an asset that will, that can be replaced, that can be fixed, that doesn't die, that you don't need to feed, that you don't need to propagandize, that you don't need to throw them a bone to be able to get them on your side. It's like subservient robots. So yeah, there's we're heading towards a point of no return. There's so much wealth accumulated into the hands of so many few people. They don't need to convince anyone to be on their side. They've commodified security through artificial intelligence, through robots. And we've participated in making that happen because we were guaranteed a bit more freedom, a bit more bread, a bit better living conditions. And that was the pill we took that allowed them to get to that amount of wealth. We need to be resisting this.
Yeah, human beings have a very special talent for predicting things through books and movies. Eh? The human beings have a very weird talent for that. They often call it predictive programming, but often we predict things that happen. And all these science fiction movies and books you've been reading, where eventually you will have these cyber wars, human beings fighting against all these AI robots, and hiding in houses with AI robots searching for us through walls and everything. That stuff is happening, man. We would be considered wackos and crazy for taking that stuff seriously a decade ago. That stuff is coming, man. And just like all these movies about fallout and nuclear war, and that we are all surviving as hunter gatherer societies again, probably it's coming too if we're not stopping this all the crap that is going on. Man, this is a very pessimistic way to end things. I'm very sorry about that. I wish we could be a bit more optimistic, but like you said, Rami, it's time to resist. But we can only resist if we have a global organized resistance, and they are keep throwing brown patsies into the scene, and people start hating on each other again. So I'm genuinely pessimistic, guys. How do
The
you see that
resistance,
as your
the
final
resistance,
thoughts?
the resistance is in Venezuela right now. There are a few countries, a handful of countries that are holding the fort for us. Cuba never surrendered. They've paid the ultimate price. They're still standing. They're resisting. Venezuela. There's this song here called "La Desalambrada," and
Yemen,
the guy Daniel
Hezbollah,
and he
what
says,
else? Iran.
if Nicaragua wins, Uruguay will be next. There's no correlation. These two countries don't share a border, but the defeat of the American empire in one place is a victory for all of us. So a victory, we need to support Venezuela. Venezuela is going to put a dent into this American project of world domination, of enslaving others, of building these smart cities, of imprisoning ourselves, right? We need to accelerate the defeat of the United States. Iran
And
hasn't surrendered.
let's not
China
forget
hasn't surrendered.
Ibrahim Traore in Africa
Course of Burkina
also.
Faso. So, as I know, it sounds pessimistic, but there's no reason to be. We're the belly of the beast. That's what Che Guevara used to describe it, and the whole world is resisting. They're resisting if we just need to pay close attention to the places that matter, and the people that are resisting. And if Maduro hasn't surrendered, if the Palestinians haven't surrendered, there's no reason for us to surrender.
Brother Dimitri, final thoughts?
Well, I don't get disheartened by these conversations. They get me fired up. So, my closing observation, and forgive the obscenity, but there's a revolution coming, motherfucker. That's what I believe.
Agreed. There's a revolution coming, motherfucker. And with those words, we're gonna end it on an optimistic note and
That might
talk
be
to
your
you.
intro, Kareem. That
Sorry.
might be your little. That might be your little intro clip.
Yes, yes. Good point. Good point. We'll do. We'll do.
I don't
I
know
will
if that's a
definitely.
good idea, but anyways, I leave it
Well,
to your
probably
program. You,
the
but yeah,
algorithm will suppress it when you start
yeah.
with the word fucker, if I'm not mistaken. But let's see. Okay, great guys, brothers. Talk to you soon, and
There.
keep up the good fight.
Hasta luego, hasta siempre.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Take care.
Static crackles, voices rise. Truth breaks through their velvet lies. A screen of fire, a shield of steel. Bedbeat medium makes you feel. No borders, no change. No silence, breathe.